A new German tier 10 vehicle is available in World of Tanks Modern Armour or World of Tanks console, and this one is a very interesting one because it is somewhat like what you would see at the tier 6 with the Excalibur. It's a new season pass vehicle that you can pick up as the ultimate season pass, which is going to set you back 6,000 gold, so it is very expensive in terms of real world money, but really cheap in terms of how much Wargaming price a lot of the tier 10s in the game at. So if you are after a tier 10, especially a German one that you can just instantly buy, then this is actually not a bad price. But like I say, that is just as part of World of Tanks and their pricing, but maybe spending £20 on a singular tank might be a bit ridiculous for the majority of people. Remember that you do have to pay 2,000 gold for the standard season pass, so in order to get the ultimate you're paying an extra 4,000. You get 25 level skips, you get this vehicle as well, and you get a couple of I believe like a 3D hero commander or like 3D standard commander, something like that. But essentially it is getting this tank for 4,000 gold if you disregard all of the rest of the stuff. If you do include that, it's even cheaper. But at the end of the day, is this tank actually worth it? Is this ultimate season pass tank an actual ultimate tank? Well, I've played it and there's a couple of things that are amazing about it. There's quite a few things that are a bit lackluster about it, and we'll get into that in today's video. So starting off, let's look at the armor viewer, because this is probably one of the most important things when it comes to this vehicle and whether or not it's actually going to be any good. So in terms of armor, it's got a 250mm lower plate, which is very flat. But the thing with this is that although it's, you know, 250mm thick and it has a decent amount of armor comparatively to a lot of the other vehicles, you can still get penned really easily in this by anything with premium ammunition. So if you do come up against this vehicle and you've got premium ammo loaded, then you can really effectively just take it out from the lower plate, which is kind of annoying, but at the same time it's, you know, one of those things where most tank destroyers in the game have that sort of thing, and there's nothing to kind of really complain about there. However, it does really work quite well when you start to angle like this, for example. Just adding a little bit of an angle can increase your armor thickness or the effective thickness for when you're playing it. So if you're seeing someone do this, what you can actually do is try and aim for the green section at the back of the vehicle, which is highlighted here right at the back, is that actually gets exposed and can be penned when they start to angle, especially if they over angle something like this. You can really easily pen it. It's only 76mm thick, so you want to be aiming at the back of the tank if they're doing this sort of thing, because the front will be so well angled that you might be looking at like 300 pen to actually go through, which is fine if you have a high alpha damage, high penetration vehicle. But if you haven't, then obviously you want to be aiming at the weakest point in the game. So that is where I would be aiming if I do find this thing over angling something like this. And of course, if it's side profile, you want to be aiming for the huge black like kind of back box that this tank has. It's just super easy to pen, and there's no real issues when it comes to the side of the vehicle. But when it does use that turret and it uses the 10 degrees of gun depression that it does get, is actually pretty effective because it's already sloped a little bit with 250mm, which then might go up all the way up to like 300mm of effective armor on the turret, and it will be, you know, angled even more, so potentially ricochet off as well. So these are things to consider when you're looking at this tank and trying to fight it. The ultimate weakness of the tank, in my opinion, is not only having pretty lackluster DPM for a tier 10. For example, this has 3,108 damage per minute, which is good, but it's pretty bad when you consider it's got 400 damage and you're kind of pea shooting, at least in terms of a tier 10. And if you couple that with the yaw limit of 40 degrees either side, you can be severely limited when it comes to playing this tank. And although it's very accurate, it has a okay aiming time. It's certainly not the best, and this is with a fully like specced out crew and everything in this tank. Yeah, it's not particularly the best DPM at all, and probably in one of the lower ends of the tier 10 TDs, for example, if we have a look at them all and just grab up some random ones, things like the Jaeger without a crew, almost the same DPM. Of course, that has super high alpha, so typically you would have lower DPM with a tank like that. You can see the Waffle without a crew, 3,180. The Gorilla 15, nearly 4,000, that's with a crew. FE215B, 2,900 without a crew. And you're kind of getting my drift when it comes to the vehicles. It is on the supremely low end, and the same with the Badger, nearly 4,000 DPM with essentially the same sort of playstyle, except it's just much slower. And that's where the speed comes into effect with this tier 10 TD. And so the Canonian Jagdpanzer 3 GST term, this has a top speed limit of 68 kilometers an hour, which is very good. The power to weight ratio 22 means that it does get up to that top speed, and it doesn't take too long, but it's not like super good to the point where, you know, you're able to get up to top speed super well. Its terrain resistances are okay, but they're not like the best in the game by any means, but they're still quite good. The problem as well that comes with this tank is that obviously you don't have a true to life turret, and so the whole rotation speed combined with like a very limited arc of your turret means that you're actually not able to keep up with a lot of tanks in the game when it comes to them trying to circle you. And that's because you got a 24 degrees a second whole rotation speed, meaning that when they try and turn and go around you, you're just not able and fast enough to turn quickly to be able to actually take out a light tank when it does try to circle you or flank you or whatever. And it can be really frustrating to play a tank like this, which is why you'll kind of be using this tank as more of a sniper role as opposed to a kind of close quarters engagement vehicle. It also makes the armor more useful because at range you have the potential that an enemy shell will go up into your upper plate and end up bouncing, or your turret and bouncing, whereas when you're closer, obviously the actual accuracy at 100 meters is 0.28, but at 500 meters it might be 0.4 or whatever. And so the closer you are, it's easier to hit a weak point than when they're further away. So playing it in that sort of role, using the speed to maneuver around to longer range distances is probably how you want to play this tank, as opposed to playing it as a brawler. But that doesn't mean to say that you can't go in towards the later end of the game, and I think now is probably the time that we take a look at its equipment. In terms of equipment, very bog standard. We went for advanced loader and improved ventilation. This is to boost my DPM as high as possible because it absolutely sucks to like 3,000, and advanced optics for a bit of increased view range. Could swap this out to have traction system. I would actually probably recommend this and actually swapping out the advanced optics so that you can just get a better turning speed and also your max speed going up, meaning that you can just feel a little bit more useful when someone does try to flank you. So that is a potential loadout as well, but primarily you can use either of the two that I've just said right there, or use whatever you want to do. But those are the kind of more competitive things, in my opinion, that I would be using. Premium consumables as normal: enhanced repair, enhanced medkit, enhanced rations. If you haven't got the money to spend 30,000 a game, drop out the medkit and use just a enhanced repair and enhanced rations and a normal medkit. If you haven't got the money, then just drop out the repair kit to a normal one and the med kit, and then have just enhanced rations. You should always have enhanced rations, regardless of if you think that you want to save that extra like 7,500 silver a battle. Trust me, the boost that you get from enhanced rations is worth every single penny, and it makes your DPM like genuinely 10% better, and just, well, not necessarily 10%, but it makes it considerably better to the point where if you don't use it, you're just at a disadvantage. So use it every game, you'll do more damage, you'll get more spotting damage, you'll probably be able to outperform any games that you do play without it, and that means that you earn more silver in each of those games anyway to cover the cost of the enhanced rations. So once again, just reiterating that. Premium rounds, don't need a whole lot of them because 265 pen on your standard is pretty good, 310 on the premium, and then 60 on your HE. Bit low on the HE side, but it's useful for things like waffles, grillers, and any of the low like lightly armored vehicles like mediums that are lightly armored and that sort of thing, but I didn't really use any when we did play the tank. Now then, this is a game on El Haluf, the gameplay portion of today's video, where we're going to show off what this tank can do in its kind of own environment and in a couple of different scenarios. Now, the replay itself, the reason why I picked this one is because of the fact that you've got a bit of long-range engagement as well as some close-range engagement, and also showcasing off the speed and where it becomes useful, where some of the slower TDs, things like E3s, E4s, and some of the like more traditional TDs with higher alpha damage and slower top speeds might not be able to do what this tank did in this game. So starting off, we kind of come to this position. Now, this is a very, very, very common position that people will take during games, and it does mean that if you do end up kind of being in that situation where people do have a brain and they blind fire, you can get dirked out of the game quite easily. You can see here we're being a little bit careful. I don't want to get spotted unless I need to, and the only time we're really poking is when we've got a real clear shot at someone, and when we do spot someone, we do pull back as quickly as possible. Now, I get a weird kind of crash thing that happened. Don't know what happened there. It literally looked like that in my game. It wasn't just the capture card. I thought, oh brilliant, I've crashed right as I was spotted out in the open. So not ideal, but at the same time, at least we're not burning on fire like some of you guys have been at the beginning of the game down to 1 HP. That was a really good start to the update. Either way, what we've done here is just taken a very casual game at this moment in time, but here comes the downside of this tank. Not fast enough to reload, and this is something that probably annoys a lot of people. It's not quite the same as what you see with the tier 6 Excalibur from the British line that kind of looks like what this tank does, but 4 tiers lower and kind of with a similar sort of DPM. I know that sounds stupid, but it literally does, I believe. I think it has like 2.8 thousand when you've got all the perks and crew skills in, something like that. So yeah, this tank is definitely not that in terms of its competitiveness of its DPM, which is where it's limited. Now, in this game, I'm noticing that we are probably going to win, but I've done 700 damage. So this is one of those situations where, through experience and knowledge, that if you don't engage early enough on, you're just going to sit there and hope that someone comes out into the open. Now, yes, I could do that, and I'm sure I would have been able to get maybe 2 shots of damage during this game. But we don't want just 2 shots of damage, we want to get a decent chunk of damage so that we actually had a good game. Because there's no point winning with 700 damage and getting 500 XP, or actually losing and getting 5k damage and actually ending up with, 1200 base XP, because, you actually did something in the game. It's much better to do that than, try and just, I don't know, sit in a base and whatever. A lot of people do that, and I don't know why. Now, unfortunately, our shot went way high there. I could have aimed slightly better, but at the same time, yeah, just a bit unlucky with it. It was obviously quite a large bloom, and that's something that this tank has. It has a horrendous bloom within the game. Now, I want to get rid of the FV215B. I was thinking that this was someone I actually knew from a long, long time ago, but I'm not entirely sure, and I should probably have looked at my friends list, Warrior. But yeah, it could be, but at the same time, I don't know. It's been years, so I'm talking like, I don't know, like 4 or 5 years since I last spoke to them. But either way, I was checking. But in this game, we actually took out the Leopard PTA from ramming. This tank is pretty chunky, pretty heavy, but it isn't the heaviest in the game, so don't go try ramming IS-7s and that sort of thing. We do get our gun damage there, which is kind of annoying, but at this close range it doesn't matter. We've got a repair kit anyway. I'm going to push into the Leopard to slow him down so he can't get rammed from behind me. This is a play which you would only do when you're that close, because if you do it from a further distance where it looks like you're going to go and try and ram into them, a lot of the times they'll just outmaneuver, and there's nothing you can really do. So you can only really push into someone like that when you are close enough that they can't actually avoid it. So it is a bit of a skill when it comes to that. I see a lot of people trying to push in and ram something, and then just the person literally just drives backwards slightly and then goes all the way around them, and then you lose all your health because of it. So yeah, just something to note if you are trying to get better at the game or just improve. Hopefully that gives you at least an idea as to what the thought process is when it comes to that sort of thing in those minute and small situations, but it's those situations where you do all of the basics right, and that's how you can on average get better damage games, get better RNG, as people like to say, because apparently everyone doesn't get the same RNG. But at the same time, in this game, we are just pushing damage. I don't really care if I get taken out. I understand there's a waffle somewhere here, so at this point, I'm kind of confident that the waffle isn't to my right, which is good. We do have a Kunze-Panzer there. We aim on the move because I need to get into cover, and then we spot ourselves a nice little Canonian Jagdpanzer, so we're going to go for him. Hopefully we can hit him in the top. Yes, we can, and with 265 pen, it's easily enough to do that. And oh dear, there's a waffle somehow not spotted, which I'm very surprised about considering our view range in this tank was like 520 meters, but somehow didn't spot him there before he spotted us and took shots at us. So yeah, a little bit disappointed that we did get taken out, but at the same time, you know, we probably could have only got another 2 shots at maximum, so picking up like 5k damage, but we still picked up 4,500. I was kind of suggesting to the waffle on our team to go up onto the hill to get a better shot up to the left here on the Kunze-Panzer since he's behind the buildings, but it looks like our T57 Heavy or T58 Heavy even is going to deal with this Kunze-Panzer quite easily, and there you go. Hopefully he's gone. Yes, he is. So in terms of this game, you saw at the end, you know, during that kind of middle to late section of the game, we were able to push in using that mobility. If you had sat there in a Waffle Panzer IV, in a T110E3, a T110E4, or even some of the slightly faster TVs in the game, you probably wouldn't have been able to push in and get to that damage when you know that you've not particularly done a whole lot at the beginning. So that's where this tank really falls into its own category. And the armor does work occasionally. It's usually an auto-aim trap because of the fact that it has a upper plate which is very, very well angled, and when you consider that when it is so well angled, you can often bounce those rounds really easily because people are auto-aiming you, and the auto-aim center of mass is the upper plate, so it bounces off, which means it's a skill issue when people bounce off of this tank. And if you know what you're doing and you're loading premium ammunition, you can go straight through the lower plate, or you can even potentially try and go for the turret, and that's going to do you well. Or if failing that and you can't do either of those things, just try and get the track in the frontal drive wheel and go through the side of the vehicle and then outmaneuver it. It's really not too difficult to take out, and this tank is really a longevity warrior. It does not do well in the first 2 minutes of the game. It doesn't have the DPM to do that, and it's more of a case of using the mobility to try to have those better games, staying out of the view range of opponents, and maybe even running a full camo build where you drop out the improved ventilation to put on something like advanced camo net, considering how bad your DPM is anyway. That might be an additional way of playing this tank. But that's kind of my summary. Is it worth it? Is it worth your gold? Should you spend your money on this tank? Well, I think if you enjoy a fast tank and you want to learn how to use these more concealment based tank destroyers and have a slightly easier time of it than some of the paper tanks, then yeah, I think if you're going to spend money on the game, this is. So I'm not telling you to go out and buy this tank. I'm saying that if you've got money, you're going to spend money on World of Tanks console, then yes, I think it is a decent option. And as always, the Ultimate Season Pass, the Season Pass, they are some of the best deals possible for you to actually earn some very, very decently priced vehicles for what the actual cost of those Ultimate Season Pass is. You're essentially paying less than 4,000 gold if you take away the level skips and the Hero Commander or Standard Commander that you get alongside the Ultimate Season Pass. You're like paying like 3,000 gold for this tank, and that is like, I don't know, £15 or something like that. Now, you can't even buy a tier 8 for like £25 at the minute, Wargaming up in their prices. So in terms of is it worth it, I think, yeah, if you're going to spend money on the game. But at the same time, should you go out of your way to purchase this tank? I don't think so, based on the competitiveness of the tank. But if you like the look of it, then yeah, I think it is entirely worth it. It gives you a bit of a more novel playstyle with the speed and actually having a bit of armor, but that DPM really does let this tank down. Does it mean that it is absolutely unusable and should never be used and that there is just no point in playing the tank? I don't think so. I think it's still fun. I enjoyed playing the tank entirely, and if you take it from that standpoint, then yeah, I think that it's a potentially good option. And no, I'm not sponsored by Wargaming. I'm not telling you that you should go out and spend your money. As always, I always say to spend your money on doing things that are actually enjoyable, like going out with family and friends. That's far more important than spending money on this game. Failing that, and you've got enough money to spend money on a game or a hobby that you enjoy, then go ahead. That's my take on it. If you enjoy the game, if you spend tens, hundreds of hours every single month on this game, then, you know, spending £10 it might not be as bad, but financial situations aside, yeah, I think this tank is quite fun, and that is the primary focus of some of these tank reviews, is to showcase not off the most overpowered, but actually tanks that are just a bit different and a bit of fun. And I thought that this was kind of one of those, but it's not amazing in any regard at all. So with that out of the way, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to smash that like button, as I know most of you do anyway, because you're absolutely just monsters. And yeah, let's jump into the next one tomorrow, and we'll take a look at some of the other Season Pass vehicles coming up in the next couple of days as well. So thank you very much, and I'll see you there. Goodbye.